Hello. Good evening and welcome. This is a meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee of the Halton District School Board for Tuesday, October the 3rd, 2023. In accordance with the Ontario Regulation 463-97 and guidelines effective February the 1st, 2021, HDSB promotes community engagement and participation by having processes in place for members of the public to ask questions. A Google form was attached to the agenda, distributed in advance of the meeting, and is posted on the HDSB SEAC website page. Questions posed during live stream meetings of SEAC may be answered during that meeting, particularly those related to agenda items, or at the following meeting at the discretion of the chair. For efficiency, multiple questions received that are similar in nature may be grouped together at the discretion of the chair and/or vice chair. Questions will not be attributed. Notation will be made that multiple people ask the same question. Any questions that contain language that is hateful or discriminatory will not be considered. So first of all, we'll start with a roll call to record who's in attendance. Please answer yes or present.
Naveed Ahmed.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Carol Baxter.
Present.
Joanna Oliver. Robbie Bryden.
Good evening.
Kate Lembacher.
Present.
Sarika Kanithi.
Present.
Alison Brindle.
Present.
Diane Vandenbosch. Nadina Torek.
Present.
Angel Zuzik.
It's actually Evelyn Bursey. Angel Zuzik is the alternate for CLNH.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
So Evelyn, you're here.
Here, present, yes.
Melissa Dockeray. Sarah Lansley. Okay, thanks.
Yes, and I think Melissa just rejoined.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry. My mic wasn't working. I'm here now. Thank you.
No problem. Sophia Siddiqui.
Here, thanks.
Kathy Turner.
Here.
Aaron Spruill.
Present.
Jennifer Laguerre.
Present.
Amanda Winch.
Here.
Kaisa Klassen.
Present.
Katie Schleifer. Present. Melissa Summer. Colette Ruddock.
Here.
And Conan Spruin.
Present.
Did I forget anyone?
And we've got Marta.
And Marta. I don't know Marta's last name.
No.
Marta is present. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Now, in recognition as well of National Truth and Reconciliation Day at the weekend, we'll begin by honouring the land. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Atawonderan, the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honour and respect the four directions, land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walk before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. So our first step tonight is to approve the agenda. Are there any modifications or amendments that need to be made at this point? If so, could you either raise your hand or either here or in the chat box? Sophia.
Hi there. Sorry, are you speaking of the minutes or the agenda?
The agenda.
Oh, my apologies. I had a question about the minutes.
Would anyone like to move a motion to approve the agenda? Great, thank you.
Yeah, Aaron Sproul.
Aaron, and we've got Catherine Turner who'll second.
Oh, perfect.
Is anybody, any opposition to the agenda as it stands? If any opposition, please let us know now. None being seen, the agenda is approved unanimously.
Next is the approval of our.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think we're just going to get to that, Sophia.
Kathy, did you have a question?
Sorry, it was by accident. I accidentally
Okay.
touched it.
No, that's fine. Okay.
So next is the approval of our September 12th, 2023 meeting minutes. Are there any errors or admissions?
Sophia.
Hi, no, I was just looking over them and I noticed that our questions were not included. So any of the questions that SEAC members asked last month were not included in the minutes. Whereas previously they used to be recorded because that sort of helped with accountability and keeping track of what was asked. I know some of our families, I had mentioned the questions asked last month, and so they will be looking for those in the minutes. Can we have them added before we approve, or?
Are you talking about the question, Sophia, about the structured reading implementation?
Yeah, one of them was the right to read question, and then there was the other question I had asked about the different committees and sign up on the committees. And I believe another SEAC member had asked a question too. I don't see any questions recorded in the minutes.
Yeah, I felt it didn't reflect any of the actual discussion that took place, only was repeating what was on the agenda.
Okay, sorry, we were just getting it turned up in here because it was hard to hear you both. Sorry, the structured reading implementation question, you would like that noted in the minutes?
Yeah, please. So it was the right to read question about how we're supporting CPP and life skills classrooms with the right to read and supporting reading. And then the other question was about committee memberships, and the question was asked in the spring about when we can sign up, when SEAC members can sign up for committees like equity and advisory and the others. And then so really, I think each month, like the questions that are being asked by SEAC really should be noted in the minutes. It helps for our families to be able to follow up if they need to look at them. So just for a matter of accountability and transparency, I think that, and similar to, I think Kathy just mentioned, she noticed something similar. I think someone mentioned that.
Yeah, okay. Kathy, could you repeat the question?
Yep, that was me, Kate Lambecker. So there's nothing reflecting all of the concerns that were raised after the gifted presentation, the ongoing concerns that ABC had that we brought up about identification, about, the pressure to stay in the home classroom and away from the self-contained. I know these are ongoing things I've repeated, but there's zero reflection that that discussion even happened and that those objections were made at the last meeting.
Yeah, well, I wonder if Marta could speak to the process for the minutes. The minutes aren't intended to capture the full dialogue. It's to capture the kind of high-level action items and decisions that are made throughout the meeting. So that is according to Robert's rules. So it's certainly, like I say, not intended to capture the full conversation.
So how do we as participants ensure that when we express a serious concern on behalf of our organization that makes it into the record? Because I feel like, why are we here if we express a concern and it disappears after we speak it?
Well, it's certainly captured in the video recording, and that is also posted on our website. And then
I think Colette, in the past, what used to happen with our minutes is that some of the bigger questions that were raised, they were often captured in the minutes. So of course, not everything, sort of not the discussions that are happening are not captured, but questions that SEAC brought up were typically captured in the minutes. Because that helps us sort of follow up too, right? And I know that was past practice, so I'm not sure how that changed. I don't always get a chance, I'll be honest, to look at the minutes, but families had encouraged me to ask some of these questions, and so I wanted to make sure they were recorded in the minutes and they weren't reflected.
Okay, so we'll take a look at some of the past minutes to confirm and model the minutes after those, and then I don't know what you want to do about passing the minutes at this point.
I think what we should do with the concern that's been raised is go back and have a look at some of those minutes. I do understand that I wasn't there, but I do understand that there were probably some major concerns raised, and then perhaps going forward, if they're not in the minutes, maybe there's a way that SEAC as a group can decide if we want something added into the minutes specifically related to a specific issue, so that it is recorded. Obviously, as you say, we can't have every single comment recorded, but if there are big issues that we really do think is important to be noted in the minutes, if that is not part of our process, perhaps we look at a way of implementing something that would capture that. Does that sound reasonable at this point? So I think that's Kate.
Yep, I think that sounds fair.
Okay, all right. So at this point in time, we will hold off the approval of the minutes, and they will be captured at our next meeting once we've determined the best protocol for capturing the essence of our meeting. Okay, thank you very much. So now we're going to begin the action items, and we're going to move on to item 2.1, and we're going to welcome Stacey Farrell, and is it tell me how I pronounce your name.
Bangeter, but Cheryl is fine.
Yes, okay. Is going to come and talk to us about HDSB's anti-sex trafficking education, and Stacey is our special education vice principal. So looking forward to this presentation. Thank you, Stacey.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen so those online can see it. Okay. So I think this is on. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm coming here today to share a little bit of work that we've been doing with our Community Pathways program around the anti-sex trafficking work that is happening across the province. So I know for me personally, I always start with why, and I think most of our initiatives that have traction and last past just a conversation start with why. And so I've shared here on the screen some of the why. And what I'd like to point out, I don't want to read it all to you, but what I would like to point out is that in that third bullet, it identifies neurodiverse persons and a lot of other identities that are vulnerable to being trafficked. And our students are not only neurodiverse, but they have a lot of other identities that may make them at increased vulnerability of being trafficked. So addressing the why or understanding our why helps us identify the problem to be addressed and also gives us a sense of urgency on completing this work. So our why is in part driven by PPM 166, which was the first of its kind in Canada. And it came into effect in 2021 and requires all boards to update safe schools policies, develop administrative procedures, and create anti-sex trafficking board protocols to protect students and empower schools to play a key role in the fight against sex trafficking. And then it's tough work though. And so this PPM in and of itself is just a piece of paper. But again, if we go back to the why, it really drove our sense of urgency for embedding this work in more than just the regular sort of Ontario curriculum, but also into the curriculum our students are accessing. So we got to work, because that's what we do in our department. We like to get to work. And so there were 3 responses right out of the gate. So one of the pieces, I have to use my talking notes because I have so many stories related to this. It's very easy for me to get off topic. So the PPM led to this protocol that I'm going to open in a moment. So it's a multi-board protocol. And so I was a part of this from its inception. So myself and our principal of Safe Schools met with our counterparts in Halton Catholic Board, the French Catholic Board, and the French Board, and we came up with focus group questions and information gathering questions that we could ask our various community members, the cultural centers in our communities, our students. And we shared all these questions with our groups, with the police, and then we came back together to collate that information and create an anti-sex trafficking board protocol. So I'm going to open that, but it's not shared. So that is in there as a link for you to access. And so that board protocol was actually really interesting to hear from our students on what they were looking for, what sex trafficking meant to them. A lot of them were very unaware, and it really highlighted the vulnerabilities of not providing some kind of education, of not highlighting how and where this happens. In Halton especially, we have a lot of affluent pockets, and students were, what, this happens in Halton? And it really does. We are an intersection of highways that make it really easy. So it was really quite eye-opening to get student voice and input into this. And then, of course, we also needed to create an AP. And so that operationalized sort of how we were going to bring the PPM to life. And that has since been posted. Both of these are public documents available for anyone to look at and review. And then in addition, of course, school staff will annually receive this training, the annual training for staff around anti-sex trafficking, thereby increasing their capacity to identify signs of vulnerability, sexual exploitation, and sex trafficking. And we know that by raising awareness, we have a much better way to stop this from happening in our community, and education about the topic is key. It's an uncomfortable topic. A lot of parents are not aware or well-versed in the topic, and so it's a good starting point to raise awareness at school. So the PPM, HDSB, and our next steps. So those three big steps are already underway and well established. We review them because we do need to continue to update and ensure we are aligned and current with our information, and they are at least already operationalized. The intensive training opportunities for specific staff. So as an example, last April at a subject-specific PD day, and I am speaking to secondary here because it's very different in elementary and secondary, the types of conversations we have, but our guidance heads, our special education heads, our student success staff, so our support staff engaged in a full day of learning to identify and support students. And that was in part led by a former HDSB student who presented, who is a survivor of human trafficking and sex trafficking, and she came and she spoke about that experience and what schools need. So it was very powerful. The bully button on all school websites, and this is underway, is currently being revamped to report harm to include an umbrella of past bullying, because most people don't think of bullying and anti-sex trafficking as the same. Parent-caregiver information evenings. So for us, I've bolded a little bit here because we as a department are looking at what are the additional vulnerabilities that our students in community pathways may face. And so how do we ensure on these parent evenings that our parents are included in that conversation? And so this, again, is underway. It hasn't yet been rolled out, but that's one of the elements or the lens we would like to bring to that conversation. There are student lessons and learning opportunities around cyber safety and anti-sex trafficking awareness videos. And again, what it looks like in the elementary curriculum and then how it continues in the secondary curriculum are two very different things, but it is embedded in both curriculums, the awareness and the learning. So our steps in SES when we were looking at this was, well, we have a lot of students in community pathways, and our employability skills certificate students often go out into the neighborhood on their own to co-op. And so how do we ensure that with their added vulnerabilities that they are aware? What is developmentally appropriate for us to speak to them? Because we also don't want to scare our students and, have them be afraid of the world. And so that's the work we did, or are underway of doing. So anti-sex trafficking in the Ontario curriculum, I've put it here. I'm not going to go into the Ontario curriculum because that's not the lane we're working with, but I just wanted to point out for everyone's awareness that it is in the Ontario curriculum and that we do draw from the Ontario curriculum to ensure high quality learning for our students as well. But where does it fit for students in alternative curriculum? To answer this question, I did get funding to release a CCA, so that's the it's our department heads for community pathways, and 1 to 2 CPP teachers to come together for a day to work together to find out where does it fit. So what we started with was we spent a day looking at our alternative curriculum. And so as a group, especially for the teachers who are on the ground delivering the programs every day, where does it make sense for this to live? How can we ensure consistency across our 7 sites that it lives in a course that won't be forgotten if a teacher moves on, right? Because we don't have the same Ontario curriculum piece to hold us accountable. So we worked on that. What are the connections in our existing CPP courses? What are the expectations in AFAC? Can we pull those out and create something that holds us accountable to meeting those curriculum expectations so it carries through every year? And then we also looked at the resources we have. Library Services was wonderful and sent us a lot of resources to go through. And Safe Schools had funding for this, and they bought a lot of resources for us to go through as well. But resources take a long time to go through, and teachers get really excited to get new resources, but then we tend to fall back into our habits and we go with what we know. So part of the day was, this is where we landed. So that full day of release last spring. So the outcome of that day, and again, this is unfortunately, share this tab instead. Okay. So where we landed is we looked at the different pathways within community pathways, if you will, complete care, communication, the community skills certificate, the employability skills co-op, and for everybody. And we decided, where do the existing resources fit? So those were existing resources on the Ontario curriculum, resources that school programs had come up with to support the curriculum, as well as the library resources curriculum that we received. And so we put all of those into program areas to help us make sure that we were developmentally appropriate. We want to respect that while some of our students may not be, reading or operating at an 18-year-old level, they are not babies, and we need to respect their dignity as well. So that's great that there's grade 3 curriculum that may be developmentally appropriate, but the content of it isn't really respecting who our students are. So we really wanted to spend some time on that. How do we respect who they are and their dignity? How do we not scare them? How do we include parents in it? And where does it live? Big questions. We got pretty far. And so this piece happened, which has been really helpful, which leads us back to the next steps. So now we need to consolidate this. Sorry, I'm not used to standing still for presenting, so I keep wanting to walk away from the microphone. So we need to consolidate what this is going to look like. So on the November 24th PD day, so we have one on October 6th, one after that, our CPP staff are coming together to embed this in a course, create what the rollout will look like, and then most importantly, what the accountability and monitoring will look like. And we are very fortunate. We have 3 existing mechanisms for accountability and monitoring. So the AP has already provided that the thou shalt for schools. So we can count on that and tap into that. The collective agreement right now currently mandates that Special Education Services runs twice a year a half-day learning session for our admin who oversee CPP and the department head of CPP. So we have that platform. This has become a standing item where we share what the work is, and that will evolve into sharing where was this delivered, how was it delivered, and revisiting the information to make sure, again, we're current and up to date and all delivering similar messages. And then SEAC, you guys are also our accountability piece, because we've come here to say these are our next steps, and we'd love an opportunity to follow up with the final product and maybe share what some of the lessons are or some feedback we get from students or parents. Not yet, but maybe next September, once we've had a semester where we can roll it out. So those are our 3 accountability pieces. What I think is really important, this is a really uncomfortable topic. Teachers are often uncomfortable with it. People aren't sure if they're going to make mistakes, say too much, say the wrong thing. I have been teaching a long time, but not, years and years and years and years and years, not that long in the tooth, but long enough. And I'm only one person. And I have had 3 students that I've been involved with directly, 2 before I was an administrator, who were victims of sex trafficking. And that is a lot for one educator to have. So I'm one educator of how many in this province, and I am not the only one with those stories. So every time I think of the why, or the work gets hard, or I get questioned by somebody, well, is this really the purview of school? Yes, it is. Because our students feel safe with us, mostly. We do a fairly good job of that, outlying situations aside, of course. And it's real. We see what happens to kids when they don't have anyone to tell. We see the signs that their baseline has changed and something is wrong. We have oftentimes the tools to ask the questions that get them to relax. They're not afraid of disappointing us. They're afraid of making their parents worry. A lot of times like, well, maybe that parent isn't trustworthy. No, kids are terrified to make their parents worry even more than they already do. And so we can provide that stepping stone as a safe place. So while it is uncomfortable, we have to work really hard to make sure we're balancing the developmental needs and the optimism that so many of our students have. It is really important work. And for me, I often come back to that why. And that holds me accountable every day, knowing the 3 hands I have held for those students. So I'm really glad this work happens. So yeah, any questions at all?
Thank you so much, Stacey. It is hard work, and I thank you for doing it. So questions, we've got Sophia.
I want to echo what was just said. Thank you so much. This actually is very, very important work, and I think our most vulnerable students in CPP often are forgotten and around these conversations. And you made several really good points that they're not babies, they are young adults, and it's lovely for us to speak to them in that way, but also in a way that they understand. I guess my question would be around how are we going to build capacity for staff? So I know the PD release was for the administrators and the department heads, but I find often that a lot of that PD kind of stays at the top, and the staff who really need to develop those skills, who are the ones at the ground level delivering this to students, sometimes don't have the skill set to do that well. So what is that going to look like?
That's a great question. So the release day was actually the heads of the departments and the classroom teachers. It wasn't for the administrators. The administrators come to a 2-day, 2-part series every year outside of AST. And now we have the anti-sex trafficking as a standing item for those 2 days. So in terms of development of teachers, once we have this where it's going to live, then it's sort of the trainer sort of model where the department heads and the teachers who participate in this are returning to the schools, and it's the work on schools to make sure all the teachers are aware of this.
Okay, that's awesome. And remind me again, I love that you said, it's not a binder, it's going to sit, it's not a file that'll sit in somebody's computer. So will it be attached to a certain course that's being delivered, or is it something that's going to be like through phys ed, or like who's going to be teaching it?
So right now, we are looking at making sure, so they're K codes, so I'm not sure how much, it kind of gets into the weeds, and I don't know how much everybody knows about how high schools are timetabled. So all K codes, all the courses in community pathways are K codes, and there's a variety of codes in there. So what part of our consolidation is we want to pick a K code that makes sense, where this can live, and there's lots of natural connections, and then we will ensure that every school runs that K code. Right now, it runs based on interest, students, teachers, but we are attaching it to a K code. I can't say which one yet because I'm not sure that'll be the work on November 24th, but that particular course will run in every school.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much.
Stacey, I wonder if you could also speak to the mandatory training that all staff have done this year.
So all staff across HDSB and across the province, but I can only speak to HDSB, take part in anti-sex trafficking awareness training. So that's part of the PPM and part of the mandate and part of the AP. And so that happens for every staff member in HDSB. And so there is that learning, and that will happen every year. That is not a one-off. That is an ongoing learning piece. And we look at that presentation and we make sure that we are updating it and reflecting and analyzing what's in there to ensure it stays aligned with the mandate that we have.
Great, thank you. Catherine, did I see your hand?
Yes, so when you said for the CPP program, would also the EAs be able to do that presentation too? Because since not just the teachers are going to be working with our kids, also the EAs would be working with the kids, and I think it's so imperative that they get that specific training for the CPP kids, so besides just the teachers. Is that an option, or will that be happening as well?
Yes, so all staff have to do that training, including our educational assistants. We can't run our programs without our educational assistants because they are hands-on with the kids every day, and there's a lot of interest from them and materials available, and they're part of the learning to help them recognize those signs. Yes.
So I live in a world of pre-verbal child and nonverbal kids. So what does that look like in terms, like you want to have those conversations, that communication with kids who can't speak? Like how are you modifying or being able to I guess, how does that work within that community of kids?
So that is part of what we're trying to figure out now. So what we've asked is the teachers who are teaching our students who are nonverbal or pre-verbal, how do we take what we have and how does that look for them? So, what do those videos look like? What do those visuals look like? And so that is a piece that I can bring back and demonstrate once I actually have something that I can give you that is more than just our planning.
Thank you.
But they are absolutely in that chart, the communication or the complete care and the communication, those are those kids. They have not been forgotten in this. I just don't have something to give you right now because we're still rolling it out.
I have a question, and it obviously it relates to special education and that we've captured some of our kids in this, but it also reflects on the wider school community. How have you received any pushback from parents or community groups that have trouble with the anti-sex traffic, and how do you make sure it's culturally appropriate?
So that is actually where we started in our community consultations with our focus groups. We met a lot of parents and community groups who did have a lot of reservations, but those reservations were based on not knowing what we were going to be talking about and educating about. And so once that mandate became clear, we have not had any pushback. The biggest conversation or the biggest pushback we had, and this is not related to special education, but I can speak to it because I was on that protocol committee, is around, I'm not quite sure how to say this. So there was some, I was like, no matter what, a parent has to be informed. And there was a lack of understanding that sometimes this is happening in the home. So when it's disclosed, you can't call the home to share it with the parent. So that was the only sort of gray area where there was lots of conversation. But again, once the mandate was made clear, the content of what we would be talking about made clear, the public documents released, we have not had any pushback.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? No, Stacey, I'd like to thank you very much for that presentation. I'm doing some other work with other community members in the region, and I was absolutely shocked to find how prolific sex trafficking and human trafficking is in Halton region, dramatically higher than Toronto.
Yes.
And yeah, we have to do everything we can to protect our kids, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, we're now on to item 2.2, and we're going to ask Erin from Voice to come up and provide us with a presentation or sit and provide us with a presentation or talk to us about the community supports that Voice offers to children who are deaf or hard of hearing.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And happy to be here and to talk a little bit more about Voice. Going to talk about not just what we do, but a little bit of a history lesson, and then talk about what we hope to accomplish and where Voice is going. First of all, we get, oh geez, I locked my screen. Sorry about that. That was the wrong button. I think I have to go and share again. Sorry. Screen. Okay, we're back. Apologies. So it's this is Voice, past, present, and future. Just like I said, a very quick history lesson. Voice was actually established way back in the 1960s by a group of organized parents who wanted their children to go to school in their neighborhood schools. Everyone's probably familiar with E.C. Drury. There was a whole network of residential schools for the deaf in the province. At the time, I think that was seen as the best model for educating children who are deaf and hard of hearing, because they could give them intensive training, in ASL, American Sign Language. But I think there was a group of parents who didn't want that. They didn't want to have to send their kids away for them to get a proper public education. So there was a lot of lobbying undertaken and a lot of work, I think, that went into developing programs like the infant hearing program, making sure having itinerant teachers in schools, having special education resources dedicated to schools so that kids could attend at their local school. There was an incredible amount of work that went into that as the paradigm started to shift away from residential schools to neighborhood and local schools. So at the time, and this was before a lot of the amazing technology that exists today, especially the cochlear implant program that has been instrumental in allowing many kids to be able to hear, listen, and speak. My daughter's one of those, so Voice, like I said, Voice was a huge organization, right? We had thousands of members. We had affiliates in different provinces. There was a time where we had our own auditory verbal therapists on staff. Auditory verbal therapy is very intensive therapy that's given not just to the child, but to the parents as well, because that, you're never going to accomplish anything in a 1 hour session once or twice a week. The therapy has to be ongoing. I mean, it's talking to your kids all the time, pointing out sounds that you're hearing. Again, Voice was instrumental in lobbying and helping to establish the infant hearing program and making sure that it got established, which really is early intervention for kids once they've been identified and before they get into the school program. And so there's home visiting teachers that will come to your home and help you. There's auditory verbal therapy. Voice supplemented this AVT. I would just say my last point on here is about Voice Camp, because it is, it was kind of one of the pillars of Voice prior to the pandemic, because it was a weekend where families with their deaf and hard of hearing children and their typical hearing children with typical hearing would get together for a weekend up north, and I always said it was amazing how you could see in just a couple of days spending time with peers and seeing other kids that are like you, that wear equipment like you, that maybe have some of the same struggles. I think that there's a kinship that those kids have with one another that's intangible. So that, I think, as great as it is to have our kids in our local schools, they don't always get to spend a lot of time with other kids that are like them. They don't see other kids that are like them. So Voice Camp was fantastic for that. In my daughter, I noticed a huge change afterwards. The confidence. She wouldn't be hiding her hearing aids anymore. She would be more outgoing, more self-confident, and unfortunately, that was one weekend per year. So that, get to the future part. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about how Voice Camp was, you meet people who say, oh gosh, yeah, I grew up going to Voice Camp. It was a big family tradition for a lot of families, and it was always, everyone looked forward to it. And it was such a wonderful experience. I never had anyone say anything negative about Voice Camp. So, we really want to get back to that. So that's kind of the past of Voice. That's where we were. I don't have that on here, but in many respects, Voice has been a victim of its own success. Those parents, those trailblazers who first got together and and helped implement all of these programs at provincial levels, did such a great job that a lot of kids don't need the support and the interventions that they used to, especially if we're talking about cochlear implants. Some kids are getting, many kids nowadays, if they're identified by the infant hearing program as being profoundly deaf at birth, they can be implemented at 3 months old. And so those kids have almost no, memory of no sound, right? And so it's quite incredible if you don't see their equipment and, and they get the proper AV therapy, you wouldn't even know that they're deaf. And so they don't have the struggles that kids historically used to. So that would, I'd say, is one of our present challenges. I haven't put it on here, but that's one thing that I think that Voice has struggled with in maybe say the last 10, 15 years, is that our funding for providing AV therapy dried up, because I think there was a thought that, this is provided in the community through the infant hearing program. Now that doesn't, that's a conversation for a different story or for a different time, because, kids don't stop being deaf at age 6 when they go into the school. They still need AV therapy and there's no funding for it, but we can get into that later. So Voice has struggled to connect with members and to attract members. And this has been, especially true since the pandemic. I think I'm getting ahead of myself here. But essentially we're governed by a really small board, and we've just, we had 6 directors, and one is leaving, and we've just had 2 new directors join for, we're having our AGM in November. So we're excited about that, having some new energy and some people that are not parents or specifically from the Voice community. We've tried to bring in some outside talent onto the board, so we're hoping that can help us, I think, recalibrate for the future. One really important thing, and it seems like a small thing, but we revised our operating name. Technically, if you look us up on the CRA website, we're still Voice for Hearing Impaired Children. But referring to someone as hearing impaired is no longer, I think, appropriate. And it turns out, though, it's really difficult to change your name with the government. So unfortunately, we're still, if you look us up, Voice for Hearing Impaired Children. However, up to maybe 6 months ago, we were Voice for Deaf and Hard of Hearing Children. And what we've tried to do is adopt a more people-first approach in our name, in our operating name, and also in our updated vision and mission. So if you go to our website, it's voicefordeafkids.com. You can find our new vision and mission. They haven't changed substantially, but we just really want to emphasize that we are, we're ready to, approach the deaf and hard of hearing community differently. I think that, when the cochlear implant program started to get established, when the infant hearing program was in its infancy, there was a real forced separation between the oral deaf community and the culturally deaf community. I think that was really unfortunate. It was unnecessary, and I think that they've learned since then that it's actually detrimental. When kids would get implanted, there was sort of this explicit sometimes acknowledgement that you can get these cochlear implants, your kid will be able to hear. You're not allowed to sign with them. You have to teach them English, and you have to speak with them. They have to learn to listen, and they have to learn to speak. And it was thought that using ASL would be detrimental to that learning curve. But I think that we've learned that it's the opposite. It's complementary. It's helpful. If you spoke Spanish at home and you were trying to learn a language, you would never say, well, while you're learning Spanish, you're never allowed to speak English. So that has changed. And I think, Voice for a period was a part of that. Just by virtue of being in the community. Our mission is about learning. Helping children establish their full potential by learning to listen and speak. But we now accept, and we want to make it known that we accept, all communication approaches. We feel like it's important that there not be, we not be exclusive. It's important to be inclusive. So that's I think a really important thing that we've changed recently. So in terms of our our we have a chapter system within Voice. We have our central board, but we have chapters we have lots of chapters, but the most active ones are here in Halton, I'm happy to say. And we have the largest geographically as well. I mean, we cover a huge area: Halton, Hamilton, Niagara, and the entire Peel region. And then Ottawa is also is also very active. Toronto is one that I really like to get established more consistently. I think maybe we need to break Toronto up into some different areas because it's such a big area geographically. It's hard for people to get together. But it seems a bit of a mystery to me why we don't have more activity and more families in the largest city in our country. I remember speaking with one of the superintendents in the TDSB, and she indicated that there's 1,000 students in TDSB that identify as deaf or hard of hearing. And so I think, wow, that's quite a community. Why aren't we reaching them? So we've got to get there, but we're working on it one step at a time. I'd say currently we have 150 registered members, and that includes that's excluding professionals. So that's alumni and current registered members that are in our system. But I would say that we in terms of active families, we are probably maybe 20% of that. We also have a large network of professionals that are connected to us. If you're a professional, a teacher, an audiologist, an ENT, a nurse, whatever, and you work with deaf and hard of hearing children, you can register with us and you'll receive our communications. We also have some, and we find that our social media channels are actually better than just sending out emails. Sending out a mass email, I think, used to work, but social media seems to be the way to engage people nowadays, especially after COVID, I think. We were all stuck at home on our screens, and so it seems to be the way of the day. But if you're a professional and you want to join, you will get on our mailing list. And about that, I think our membership engagement has been decimated, and I've spoken with many organizations have found this as well. We just don't have people, coming out and wanting to be part of a community as much anymore as we used to. We're trying to get more in-person events going. Like I said, Voice Camp is something that I really want to get going for this year. I also, we'll talk a little bit about the future in a few minutes. So, and I would say in terms of our present, one of the things we did in May was we ran Dress Loud Day. I know that we can do a better job of getting the information out there to all the school boards, to workplaces, marketing it a lot better, just to make people aware of some of the challenges and the fun parts of being deaf or hard of hearing as well. So that's that's one of our big initiatives every year. And so I think watch out for Dress Loud Day 2024 to be out there. So and just HHNP is, like I said, is our largest chapter, and we're fortunate to have Kathy. She's sits on the executive. And I think Kathy wanted to say a few words about what's happening at the Halton chapter these days. Go ahead, Kathy.
Hi, thank you for having us Voice present. So just a little top off what Aaron has said. So we have many families who don't have anyone who is deaf. So we have a place for all of us to come together and meet, which is phenomenal. And so that are just like them. And for example, when my son was at one of the holiday parties, as Aaron was saying, like, it's great when people come together. He was looking around, everyone has the same technology as him or something similar. And all of a sudden he looked at his brother's ears and put his finger in his ear. He goes, his hearing aids are missing. Like, he's supposed to have them because everyone around him was just like him. So it's great. So also we have coming up, we have our annual costume pumpkin picking. We're trying to find a different place because we normally have it at Andrew Scenic Acres. So we're hoping to find something similar that's close by for all our families to come, because we are not just Halton, we're Peel, we're Niagara, we're Hamilton. So we try to find something that's kind of for everyone to come. And all the kids, we all go on a tractor ride, which is amazing. And our kids love it, pumpkins, and they all dress up. We also have, every June we go for Great Wolf Lodge. And we're trying to bring back what we used to have prior to COVID. We would meet once a month for socials. We used to go to McDonald's at Dorval Crossing because we used to have a play place and a central thing. And because we gotten so big, we used to do it at an indoor playground. And so the parents get to talk as well, and the kids get to really hang out as well as the siblings. Because as much as our kids who are the deaf and hard of hearing children, they have some, but the siblings are not understanding, so they can also talk too. So it's not just for the parents and for the children who are deaf and hard of hearing, it's also for the siblings. I find that's really helpful. As well as we try to do fundraisings. In the past, we've done golf to fundraise for our chapter. We are one of the biggest chapters going. We also do holiday parties, so we're trying to get that all back. We've done our last holiday party where we have a visitor from, it may be like who used to be Santa Claus. We had Elf on the Shelf to come visit us once, and just really get together and celebrate the winter season and things like that, and just be very respectful of everyone's beliefs too. So that's what we do. Trying to think what else. We have so many. We had Maple Syrup Walk in March. So we're trying to really go back to having once a month socials. I'm part of the executive for the Halton chapter, and we want to really expand on that. So if you have your families who would love to join our group, Voice for Deaf Kids, go there as well. We do have a Facebook page for HHNP chapter. It lists all our events and also parents too. So that's where we put all our events and a lot of things coming up. Like, for example, the conference coming up this month, which is also a really handy thing to have as well. And I think that's it. Is there anything else I mention, Aaron?
No, I think that's good, Kathy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think we're a little bit overtime here, so I'm going to try and get through the rest of this quickly. And I think I've already touched on a lot of these pieces nevertheless. One thing I do want to talk about, though, that's for me, I think is going to be really important for the future is the mentorship program that we want to get started. I'd really like to get, we've spoken about how kids getting together feel so much better about themselves, when they see their peers and see other technology users. So I'd like to get a grade 11 or 12 student, or even a first or second year university student, paired with a small group of kids that are also deaf and hard of hearing, and have them get together, once a month, kind of modeled after a Big Sisters and Big Brothers idea, but more in a smaller group setting, just to get together. I think that'll allow the kids to develop some community among themselves more than just once a year at voice camp, and also have someone older that's gone through the same challenges that they're facing. So that's one thing that I really want to get off the ground after we get through this conference, which is coming up. I've got here, with our conference 2024 is the future, already looking forward to next year's conference. But this year's conference is coming up October 13th and 14th. We're really excited. If anyone is interested in going there, you can go to our website, voicefordeafkids.com, and it's all the information is there. There's some incredible speakers that have been put together for this. And just again, reconnecting with these students. I think that's what's going to be really important about the conference is reaching those service providers, the teachers, the audiologists, and saying, hey, send us to your kids because they need us and they need each other and we need them. So that's voice. So apologies for going a little bit over.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for that presentation, and what a lot of work you're doing. It's amazing. So it really sounds like a wonderful community. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Just, I guess, a comment and a question. One, that we have our team, or some of our team, going to your conference from our deaf and hard of hearing team. So we're quite excited to learn from your organization. And listening to all of the things that you do, I'm wondering, how can we kind of amplify your message and make sure that our families know about the events that you're hosting and the work that you're doing and the supports that you offer. So I don't know, Stacey leads that team, and I don't know whether you have some ideas, or Erin, whether you have some ideas, or I see Kathy has some ideas around how we can help you.
I think, for me, working in a school system too, is making sure all our deaf and hard of hearing attendants and educational audiologists, if you want to connect with me, with one of them, I'm happy to make. So I made it for flyers for the one in Peel, but for all our events coming up, and just say, here you come, and here's our names, numbers. So that way, and any parent, or even we used to have cards, we can figure that out. But really just to let their parents know, hey, there's this program out there, or this organization out there. We'd love to have you be great. Because sometimes when I go to Sick Kids and I sit there and I see parents, I'm like, here, join us. It'll be great for you. So I think a lot of parents who are just starting their journey as well and going into the education system, it's so imperative for the kids to see somebody else, so that they feel, sometimes feel like they're different from the others, but when they're there, like, hey, they're just like me. Like, this is great. And so if I can make flyers up when I have made flyers up for our upcoming events and have the email, and they send it to all the parents, like, hey, here you go, just RSVP to this email. And we would love to have families from all throughout Halton coming in. So
yeah, I think that we have fallen flat a little bit on marketing ourselves in the past. So I think, again, the conference, I think, is going to be a good stepping stone for getting back to, kids coming into the school system when they get identified then, hey, here's an organization that can help you. When kids are young and they get identified, it's more the parents that need support, because your brain goes, oh no, what's happened? My child is deaf or is hard of hearing. They don't know anything. They don't know where to go. They need that support. And I think that was fundamental for us. That's why we've stuck with Voice, because we wanted to give back the same way that some of those parents gave to us when we were, young and stressed out about, what is the future going to hold for these kids of ours. And, so again, I think it comes down to basic marketing, getting into Sick Kids and getting into Cheeto and in London. And, I'm getting 1,000 new flyers printed out this week because I want to be able to hand those out at the conference and be able to deliver them around so that people know that we're out there. I think that most of the new members that we get these days, they're happening upon us, via internet searches or Facebook searches, and they join us that way. So we just need to, like you said, we need to amplify that message. So I'm going to be sending the teachers home with a bunch of they're brand new flyers that we've finally gotten out. So I think sometimes you need a piece of paper.
Yes, Stacey.
The timing is excellent because I'm meeting with our DHH team in the morning. So I was just actually making note that I will put this sort of, our team is very involved, but I don't know that we take the next step to involve parents. And so that will be, I think, one of our agenda items. How do we ensure our IRTs talk to the CERTs who are in schools to make sure parents are receiving this information? Sort of kind of what I'm picturing it as a role, but it's, like I said, great timing. I'm meeting with them at 8:30 tomorrow morning.
Fabulous.
So, Stacey, if you want to email me once I talk to my executive, because we plan all this stuff for our chapter, which is for the school, the region the school is in. So I can definitely send you things to send to you so you can send it to all the families. So I can make up that we're just making sure where we can have our pumpkin picking and patch. I got an email from Robbie. Thank you. So I'll pass that along to my executive, and we can just do that if that sounds good to you as well.
Well, this has been wonderful. It's great to see connections being built and progress being made for all different types of exceptionalities. So one of the other amazing things about SEAC. So thank you very much for presenting. And we'll certainly keep an eye out for the events that you're putting on.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, we're on item 2.3. So in the pre-reading, you were all provided with a copy of two letters that TDSB, Thames Valley, I guess, sent to the Ministry of Education on the insufficiency of the special incidents portion and the GSN funding. So they provided that for our information. I just wanted to remind SEAC, because we have many new members, that on the 13th of June 2022, following a motion that was passed at the SEAC that month, I wrote a letter to the Minister outlining our concern about the inadequate level of the SIP funding and special education funding in general. We have not yet received a response. A question did come up about from a member of the public about where were those letters. They are in the minutes of the SEAC meeting, so that would be the minutes of the June 2022 meeting, except we just realized when we went onto the website that is the only set of minutes that is missing in the last 2 years. So those will be going up, and then you'll be able to see the letter that was written to the Minister. As I said, no response has been received. But at this time, does anybody have any comments regarding the letters that they saw, or does SEAC wish to take any further action? Aaron.
Well, I mean, I'm not too familiar in how this kind of advocacy work goes, but I mean, if we haven't received any response from the Minister, is it usual to send a reminder? I don't know. And is that appropriate to say, hey, we haven't received anything. We haven't received a response. I think they have an obligation to at least acknowledge.
Yeah, I don't know what normal board practice is. In that I presume the Board of Trustees sends letters on regular levels. Do you generally get a response?
I think so. I think maybe this is something that I can take to our chair, and given that she prepares letters, that other communication that we've sent to the ministry, and ask her if perhaps she could follow up on SEAC's behalf. Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, that'd be great. Or if, again, if they want us to send another letter, I mean, again, it was agreed at the June 22 meeting that we felt it was important enough that the funding was not adequate. And yet again, we are in a deficit position on our special education funding. Yes, I do find it a little bit disconcerting that we haven't received any response. So when there are certain things that the ministry needs at a quick turnaround, but then when we ask a question, we don't get a response. So if you could take that to Margot and ask her what would be our next course of action, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, at this point in time, Sophia.
Sorry, so I did want to follow up with my questions from last month. Is this an appropriate time to ask about that?
So yes, we're now on item 3.0, which is the SEAC discussion and question period. Do you have any questions? Sophia.
Perfect. Okay, so I did want to ask about CPP staff training and skills, particularly around literacy and the right to read report that was released by the ministry. So how are we, I know the right to read is sort of mandating that all schools have, explicit instruction in reading. And I know that several boards, and I think Halton included, has ordered resources, and there's lots of training for staff to roll that out with the elementary, middle schools. I guess my question is around the children in any sort of contained programs like the life skills or the CPP. Often that staff gets sort of left out of that training, or the resources are not there, or there's sort of ambiguity around, what's an appropriate fit for our kids, because, they are reading at a certain level, but of course they're a lot older. So I guess my question is, what is that going to look like? Because I've checked in with several schools, and most CPP programs are saying that, our staff really have not had literacy training at all.
So thanks, Sophia, for this question. I believe I answered this question last month, but I'm happy to answer it again. So as you've highlighted, for our kindergarten through grade 8, we're rolling out the new Ontario curriculum, and embedded in that new Ontario curriculum is the science of reading, or the structured reading approach. And while the curriculum doesn't extend to our CPP programs, we know that there is of great value for our students in those programs to be literate. And so Christine Howard, who was here last month presenting on the social thinking program, is one of the individuals who's leading that work. So she's working with a team in our department on designing what that literacy looks like, and more importantly, what the resources are that would be appropriate. Much to the comments that Stacey made earlier about making sure that we're teaching to the cognitive level, but as well as the kind of the social level of our students. The same goes for reading. So our students in CPP might be reading at a grade 1 or grade 2 level, but the type of books that would be appropriate for grade 1 or 2 would not be appropriate for CPP. So we're in the process of designing that, identifying what resources would be appropriate, and then we will be rolling it out to our CPP programs and providing professional development for staff. So the answer is it's in the works. It's on our radar. It's a priority. It's built into our goals for the department that we have identified, and we're working on it, and we will be bringing something back to SEAC when we have a plan.
Okay, that's wonderful. So is that something that we're looking to be rolled out this academic year?
It will likely take the time to build this year in terms of identifying the resources, developing the scope and sequence, providing the professional development to staff. So I can't say that it will be in classrooms for kids this year, or perhaps towards the end of the year where we'll start to get there, but certainly for next year.
And can we, I'm trying to think outside the box, just because it's a real struggle. Like, we have a lot of kids in CPP and life skills that literally can't read, and then, because they just don't have the support, and this happened last year too, where my kid and a few other kids in elementary schools, we said, if you're in a K-8 school, you have teachers that are expert reading instruction, they have strategies, they have resources. Why can they not work together and share or partner? So I'm not sure how Halton works, but is there sort of a reading coach or a reading IPL or somebody that could, in the meanwhile, visit some of the life skills or CPP classrooms just to get the teachers going, a little bit of training. And it's okay if it's the same strategies as what the elementary kids are using. But just to get them, because there are, CPP staff sometimes, some of them are there because they want to, some of them are there because they've been placed there. But I feel like any type of training, I would hate for another year to go by where they don't have any training at all. So is there some partnerships or any sort of staff that could go and visit some of the CPP programs to provide some support for literacy?
So I should have mentioned, I'm sorry, that we are in the process of training all of our schools. Every elementary and secondary special education resource teacher will be trained in Wilson. So, while we're in this phase of implementing it, embedding it into the design of the program, we are already training our staff in secondary schools on how to do Wilson. So that work has happened, and we have additional training for staff. I think we have about 60 people who are either new into the positions or weren't trained last year, and they will be trained in October.
Okay, that's awesome. And Colette, this is not for you. I know how, a system is so huge and I know it moves slow, but I'll be honest. Last year, my son was in grade 8 and I was told by the school that we've ordered Wilson books and training is coming. And the entire year went by and we didn't see a single one of those books, nor did the teacher ever get to that training. So I appreciate that. I think the intent is there, and I know the board has the best of intentions, but unfortunately our kids, they're moving along, right? So, you missed grade 7, you missed grade 8, there's no training, now you're in grade 9, and we're still waiting on training. So it's just, as a parent, it's frustrating because these are precious years, and while the training is happening, while the PD is happening, these kids are missing out on really important skills.
Yeah, and
they're not.
We share that sense of urgency, Sophia. We know time is of the essence for our students to learn to read, so we feel that same sense of urgency.
Okay, keep us posted because again, it's we need the help now, and this has been echoed by so many of our families, and I keep telling them. I told them last year, it's coming, and then I'm going to go back now and tell them again that it's coming. So I just, people are anxiously waiting for this. So, yeah, keep us posted. Thanks.
Are there any other questions? I have a quick question that leads on from Wilson, training in Wilson. Obviously, you're doing a great job in training all these staff. I'm presuming by the end of the year, we'll be able to see some data about how many students have actually received a set number of hours with Wilson, because was Wilson supposed to be 100 and... Wilson, you start partway, you can start any time during the year, can't you? So it would be interesting to know how many hours students have received or on average with Wilson, because I know that obviously it's great to have all the materials, but we know our CERT's very, very busy people, and actually getting the time to deliver the programming with the students that need it. So I'm not going to ask for the data now, but maybe towards the end of the year.
Well, I'm happy to say that we're moving towards Wilson across the tiers. So our tier 1 and 2 resource will also be Wilson. And for everyone that may not know what Wilson is, it is a very comprehensive, structured reading approach that is systematic and explicit in how to teach phonics and phonological awareness at kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, as well as the program that we've purchased for our special education teachers. So we have ordered, as a system, we've ordered kits for every kindergarten, every school that has kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2 English programs. Those kits will be arriving in October. And then we will be really fully implementing Wilson across the tiers. So as we know, it's not just what happens in tier 3. It is important that the student receives the support across the tiers. And so to track hours would really be virtually impossible in every classroom, in every school.
Robbie.
And I'll just add that there are schools that have already rolled this out. Certainly one in my ward has rolled it out last year. And so this is in full operation already while it's arriving across schools. You said in October, Colette?
Yes, so the learning has begun around the elements of the new curriculum and what phonics and phonological awareness is, and we have a phonological awareness screening tool that we've had for the last 18 months, so that re-emphasis on that screening tool as well as the phonics screening tool. That has happened, and now we're waiting for the resources that should arrive in October.
Okay, great. And just to make a comment, as one of our impact evaluation indicators for CDL, we have actually put down that the clients coming to us will decrease because they are getting the supports in schools. So that's what we're aiming for. So we're really happy to see it roll out. Okay. Any other questions? And that is Sophia.
Hi, apologies. So I'm going to sort of come back to the question that I had asked last month again, just to follow up about the committees. So I know, Colette, we were emailing back and forth, and just so that, if in case others have the same question, the question I had brought up in the spring actually was around the committees, in particular the Equity Advisory Committee. And so in the spring, I was told, in the fall, I would be given dates and we would have an opportunity to join some of those committees. And then most recently I was told that the committees are full now and that I would have to wait another year. So I think SEAC would love some clarification around how do the committees work? How can we get involved?
Yeah, so sorry, Sophia, just to jump in. We did actually hold put through a number of people. Maybe it was a meeting you weren't present at, but we did have a discussion at the time of all the different positions that were available. Different members of SEAC put forward their names, and where necessary, a vote was held.
What month was that? Do you remember what month that was? Because perhaps I missed it.
It would have been very shortly after we started, so maybe September, October. Oh, where are we?
No, it was in the New Year's. It was like either May.
I can get back to you with the date. I can't quite.
Yeah, no worries. I've just asked, so I feel like I keep asking and I keep badgering and I feel horrible doing it, but I just feel like there should be a SEAC voice, and because it's virtual, it's the first time that we're able to actually join. So I really wanted to be a part of the Equity Advisory Committee. So at this point now, is it too late to be able to join, or how does that process work? I'm trying to get some clarity.
Yeah, so at this point in time, we already have a SEAC representative on that committee, Kaiser. And so I guess unless there was a need for Kaiser to step back, that position is filled at this point in time.
Okay, so annually there's only one position, only one SEAC member can join a committee? Is that how it works?
Yes, one SEAC representative. And in the past years, I don't know how it's worked, but I don't think it's been yearly. But whether that's something we want to change, but I don't know what the terms of the committees are. We'd have to find out what terms they are operating under, and then how often we can rotate in. I do agree that it's good for SEAC members to be involved in different committees and to offer different perspectives.
And I think previously, we were never part of those committees just because they were during the day and working hours, so many of us were not able to make it. Now that they're virtual, it would be great too. So if I could please, as a follow-up, if somebody could send me that information, I would love to know. When does this process take place? What the process is for us to join, and when would be the next opportunity for me to be able to join that?
Yeah, great.
And did you say Kaiser? Did you say Kaiser?
Yes, Kaiser Klassen.
Okay.
And just a quick question, are they virtual?
It really depends on the committee. So some committees have moved to virtual meetings. I believe PIC has moved to virtual.
Okay.
But others like AODA, I'm not sure.
Okay. So again, we could get, Carol.
So I'm the trustee representative, on accessibility, and they are in person, or at least they were, and I know the one that's coming up soon is. Whether or not there will be a hybrid option, I'm not sure. But I know one thing accessibility is moving toward is trying to have in-person meetings at various sites in the board so that committee members can see some of the initiatives that have been put in place. So we had a nice tour of a school at the last one to see some of the new things that are being integrated into the newer buildings.
So, Sophia, to come back to your question, we'll find out some information about how often the committees need to have, how often they're looking for new representation, how often, we might decide that we can change that representation, whether they're meeting in person or online, because that obviously may play a difference in roles, and just really setting a timeline perhaps for SEAC or that we can bring back to SEAC to say, okay, when would we like to change our representation, and what will be the process around that?
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. And, if it's fluid at all, and if there's no sort of strict rules, which I don't imagine there should be, I would love to join, and I'd be interested. And I think I've expressed that a couple times now. So if possible, if somebody could look into that and then get back to me, that would be much appreciated.
Okay, yes, that's great. And I will look into that. Any other questions?
I've had my hand up. I don't know if you can see that I've had my hand up.
Sorry, I can't.
I just want to say that at the meeting in September, we identified that everyone present who had been assigned a committee by SEAC, I was the only one that had managed to get to a meeting and find out when it was. And that was only through very annoying persistence until somebody gave me the information that I managed to do that. So we identified at the September meeting that we were not being given any information. Even those of us who had been assigned a position on behalf of SEAC did not get the information we needed to join. And although Marta sent out some dates this week, it doesn't include connection information, and we still aren't being looped in by the committees, either because they don't know we're supposed to be or whatever. There's still something missing. Even for those of us that were identified as representatives, we're not being looped in properly. And again, the only reason I managed to get into the last meeting of the last school year was because I was really annoying about it.
Okay.
Similar to what I'm being, I think, right now, Catherine.
Never. We will certainly find out what the problem was with that, and perhaps Colette can take that on as to find out who needs to be contacting. We've got your names written down on our sheet of paper, so we'll get you looped into whatever meetings need to be attended. Okay? All right, at this point...
Sorry, it's Sarah. I had a question.
Okay, sorry, Sarah, yes.
The Accessibility Coordinating Committee, you said that was moving to in-person?
So I know that the last meeting, which was before the summer, was in person. Mm-hmm. And I've just pulled up the calendar now. It's in the calendar on October 19th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And I'm not able to tell. I don't think they've decided because it says TBD as the location at this moment.
Could I say, and obviously site visits would be a different piece, but could I recommend or make a suggestion that they remain hybrid? Just because I understand there was a move to get parents and community members involved in that particular committee, and I am, full disclosure, related to someone on that committee, and it's not always possible because he's often in Toronto for work. It's not always possible for him to get back to go to an in-person meeting. So just wanted to put that out there if it was possible to maintain hybrid or to take that back to the group.
Yep. Did you want me to reach out to the person who put it in my calendar to get some information? Sorry.
Sure, that would be great.
I know that's not terribly helpful, but that's
no, and I just sort of wanted to put it out there because I'm not sure who's a member of that committee right now. But I just wanted to put it out there that in order to, for the sake of accessibility, that maybe it remain hybrid.
Yeah, and Evelyn is our representative on that committee. So again, Evelyn, if you're looped into a meeting, if you could.
I am actually. Yes, thank you. I was going to chime in. I did receive some email or some calendar invites, and then I received actually a clarification of location just this morning. So I'm going to, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And is that location virtual or is it in person?
Actually, yeah, good question. It looks like it is in person. I'm not sure if it's exclusively in person or if it's in person with an option for hybrid. All I saw was that it is located at a school in Milton.
Oh, well, that's a site visit. I completely understand that piece. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. Well, again, good conversation. So we're now at item 4.0, communications to SEAC. And we've all received the superintendent's report. And I'll let Colette provide a brief summary and we can ask any questions.
Super. Well, first I'd like to start by welcoming our new SEAC members. We have Jennifer Lagar and Amanda Winch, who have joined us from with Autism Ontario, and we're happy to have Autism Ontario back on our SEAC, as well as Angel Zuzik, who is the alternate rep for Community Living North Halton. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining this and being a part of this work. I'm going to ask Conan to give an update on our ASSDP Saturday sessions.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. So I just wanted to give an update on that. So we have a wonderful IPL named Audrey, who was in charge of that program. So what it basically is, it's our first parent coaching session for families of children with ASD. The way families got involved with this is we had a number of families and parents attend an ASD preparing for kindergarten and grade 1 session this July. We actually had about 75 children attend that this summer, which was absolutely fantastic. Invited students were enrolling into their schools. From that, of the 75 children and families that came, there was an invitation to join the Saturday coaching workshop, and we actually had 13 children and 17 parents attend that, which just happened last weekend. The goal of that was basically for the educators to help parents better interact with their children by learning strategies associated with their child's current level of play that include people play, toy play, and imaginary play. It ran from 9 to 11:30 at P.O. Robertson in Milton. There was a speech and language path there. Audrey was there, and we had 3 teachers there, highly experienced in working with children with ASD. Basically, the feedback was fantastic. All the parents who attended it loved it, said they plan on coming back again. We're running 8 more sessions right through till the end of December, and then we're hoping to run it again in the spring as well, just because already after one session, the feedback has been very well received. So, yeah, it's been a great experience so far for our families.
The CCAT administration is well underway. This is our grade 4 screening that we use to develop learning profiles about our students, as well as screen for giftedness. There is a comprehensive timeline that can take us well into the early part of the new year, but those assessments are all out in schools and underway. And lastly, an update is LinkedIn about the moves, changes, and opening and closing of self-contained classes. So an overview is provided there, and I know Kate has a question.
I do, and you knew it was coming. Yes, so I have been feeling distress from families for the last couple of weeks about both the closures and some of the class reorganizations that have been happening. In particular, the closure in North Halton, where in effect it means that the families in primary North Halton don't have a reasonable pathway to self-contained for their children, because I don't know if this is the case, but a parent told me they were told their primary child would have to take 1.5 hour bus rides each way to come into Oakville if they wish to continue in a self-contained placement, which is not a reasonable, accessible choice for parents to make for their children. And so in effect, it takes away that choice from all of the parents in North Halton. And we continue to be concerned that the change in the way that gifted students are identified in the earliest years before the CCAT, and the pressure on families to stay in the home classroom is having a large effect on self-contained placements. And we continue to argue that access to their like-minded peers is essential for their social, emotional, and intellectual well-being. Besides the 2 closures that are covered in your report, we've had a report from a parent in distress because of a class reorganization in self-contained that caused a significant gender split in the classroom. And I know I brought up the sort of role that gender division and gender composition in the self-contained classes has on the children and families in those classes. So overall, we have a lot of families who are reporting significant distress in their children at the moment. And the shifting that's happening right now and the reorganization of these classrooms that's happening is causing, and I know that that's a thing that happens not just in self-contained classes. We're absolutely aware that that kind of September reorganization is a thing that happens across the board. It's not confined to self-contained classes. But in this case, many families continue to be concerned that they're being pushed out of self-contained as an option, that their children don't have reasonable, close to home choices to ensure that their children are getting a way to meet their intellectual needs and their needs to connect with their like-minded peers. So I definitely want this in the minutes, please, that ABC Halton expresses extreme concern about the state of the self-contained placements in Halton.
Thanks, Kate. And perhaps for the benefit of the group, I can shed a little light on those concerns. So, first and foremost, I certainly recognize the stress and the impact of reorganization. As Kate mentioned, this is a time where we are looking at all of our classes, kindergarten to grade 8, regular classes or self-contained, to make sure that they are compliant with the ministry class size requirements, and then that ties to our funding. The case that Kate has highlighted in particular at Sam Sherritt, it was resulted in low numbers across the grades, and so we did reorganize the junior intermediate classes to get them closer to the funding targets of 1 to 25. That reorganization left 2 kids, one in grade 2 and one in grade 3. We are funded at a 1 to 23 for primary, and so running a class with 2 students was not fiscally responsible or viable. So it did result in that particular class closing and presenting the families the option to cluster together in a 2-3 split class at the same school, returning to their home school or the self-contained placement at Pilgrim Wood. I do want to recognize for all of our students that transportation is a consideration, and that our guidelines for HSTS is an hour bus ride. Their goal is to not have students on the bus for more than an hour, and that could be within your home community or within a self-contained setting. So there's no promises of short bus rides because we are short on bus drivers. Those buses make more stops and are loaded more than they have been in the past. So we do recognize that transportation is a consideration for our families when they're making decisions about school locations and class placements, and certainly is a consideration when that class is located in a neighboring municipality. I do want to highlight, that our special education programs and services that is detailed in our special education plan is built on the foundation that inclusion in the regular classroom is first and foremost. And we believe that the needs of most kids can be met in the regular classroom. And with the right supports, whether it's, the right goals in an IEP, support from the CERT, instructional practices of the classroom teacher, the right resources, that those needs can be well served. And again, particularly in the primary classroom. I'm not sure how aware the SEAC is about the special education review that occurred in 2018. But a focus of that review was to look at our problem-solving practices, screening and assessment procedures, the identification criteria, and the placement options for several exceptionalities, in particular ASD, gifted, and learning disability. And it resulted in a number of recommendations, one being number 6, to support primary students who demonstrate characteristics of giftedness in their home schools. So that review really mobilized us to look at how do we better equip our primary teachers to support our students who are showing characteristics of giftedness within their regular classroom and within their home school, so that we could ensure that we're delivering services across the exceptionalities, and that where there is demand, we're meeting that demand to support students in that Tier 3 environment. So we have, since 2018, and it was my predecessor, Superintendent Zonneveld, who made a commitment to SEAC, and with the support of SEAC, to promote the problem-solving pathway as a means to meet the needs of learners through the various tiers of intervention, starting first and foremost, as I've said, with the regular classroom, to also improve the pedagogical practices of our primary teachers and our CERTs, to make sure that they understand the characteristics of the gifted learner, the differentiation strategies, and the improved IEP goals and implementation of those IEPs. And so that has been a focus of our work for the last number of years, and certainly we're seeing the results of that work in that the demand for primary gifted is decreasing because we are better serving the needs of those students in the regular classroom.
I saw a hand up there from Amanda.
Hi, yeah, I'm just to follow up on that. If that's the case, then can we assume that the EA support is going to be dramatically increased? Because if we're going to be shutting down like classes where they're like the closed classes that they have the full support, and we're not going to supplement that with enough EAs, as there's not exactly enough EAs already, what's the plan for that?
So sorry, that recommendation number 6 was specifically around gifted self-contained and supporting the gifted primary learners in the regular classroom.
Kate.
So to my knowledge, ABC did not support that position to de-emphasize this. Just so that that's clear, what I have been told was that ABC actively objected to that, to a position that de-emphasized self-contained placement. And again, a primary reason is that studies in general indicate that the importance of access to like-minded peers for the well-being of gifted students. And although, you know, students can be in their class and have IEPs and people who identify that they have unique needs, that is not the same as access to like-minded peers. And as the classes disappear, you are automatically going to have fewer families that are willing to consider long bus rides or small classes with multiple grades. And it's a situation that feeds itself, where what the families are telling us is that their needs aren't being met in the classroom and that they're unhappy and that they're in distress. And that's a different message than what you're saying to me, because, you know, are we connecting with the parents and ensuring that that's the case? Because they're not, we're in effect taking away access of these children to their like-minded peers, and that can have some significant long-term impacts on their social, emotional, and intellectual well-being in the classroom. Whether you are, you know, even if a best attempt is being made at meeting some of their academic needs in the classroom, that's not the only needs that these students have. Again, I just want to voice that ABC does not agree with de-emphasizing the self-contained, and has significant concerns that as these programs are collapsed, people are less and less likely to opt in because of the real accessibility of the program, either due to gender imbalance, due to the transportation, due to the number of mixed classes. It's not an attractive option to them anymore. And so you can't, it's hard then to say that they're choosing that isn't an option because they don't self-contained versus they're choosing that is an option because the state of those classrooms is not something that they can consider as a positive thing for their child. If there's, a completely crammed multi-grade, 21 to 24 student, almost all twice exceptional, and they have to take an hour bus ride, that isn't an appealing option for these families. And it's not because they don't want a self-contained option.
Kate, can I just jump in? Because I was actually there when the vote took place. I'm one of the few oldies now. And it was, I would say, it was a very, it was several months of intense conversation at SEAC around the primary or the early screening for gifted students. And I can say that ultimately in the vote, ABC did vote to go with the consensus of SEAC. They had concerns, but they did vote to move ahead on the understanding, and this is where I think we all need to recognize that we're here to support the well-being of all students with exceptionalities and not just our individual groups. So I know that ABC, the representative at the time, took on board the fact that a large number of psychology hours were being screened, were being used screening a vast number of very young children to give them access to, what people might call an elite program, or certainly the gifted program, where there were many children with learning disabilities, autism, other exceptionalities who could not get to see a psychologist because of the wait list. So ABC at that meeting agreed that for the betterment of all students that we are responsible for on SEAC, that they would approve the change. They had reservations and they wanted to see how it would go. But I just want to clarify that as the past of what took place. And I would say as the Centre for Diverse Learners, we are extremely grateful for that, I can't even think of the right word, but that support that was given to allow students who can't read to get access to psychologists and diagnoses that would allow them to move forward on their educational journey. So I really, truly am grateful to what was done. And I think it's an amazing example of what CX should be doing as a collective to support one another. The other question I have for you, and it's a comment, and I would say I am also the parent of a gifted child, and I have struggled. Well, I didn't send them to a gifted program. I kept them in their homeschool. You talk about the need to be with like-minded peers. I'd like to understand a little bit more about, is it really about an educational opportunity that parents see as coming from the gifted program, where perhaps their students might do better, have better access to improved curriculum or something? Or is it the like-minded peers? Because if it's really like-minded peers, I'm a bit worried about that too. Are we going to start clustering kids based on ethnicity, other factors which are all equally important in their well-being and social development? I don't want to come across as really being too harsh, but I really would like to try and understand what is it that the child is struggling from, that means that they have to be in a separate classroom, because I would imagine that most of our gifted kids are not.
Well,
Well, we're planning on doing a presentation next month, so I do hope to address some of the sort of research behind the benefits of gifted children connecting to one another. But it's, I think the presentation by Voices earlier really said it, in that they met kids like themselves and they felt, and it absolutely changed their perception of themselves and how they fit, right? And it's the same thing for many of these children who feel absolutely out of place often in their classrooms, and the opportunities to connect with kids who are on their wavelength, not exclusive, I mean, not necessarily exclusively. If we look at the high school clustering, for example, that is not an exclusive environment, but it is an environment that makes it easier for these children to find one another. It is an enlightening moment for many of these children to find other children who think the way that they think, and a feeling of belonging, I guess, and that allows for opportunities with projects, with group work, with all kinds of social aspects that many of these children can be missing, and it can cause extreme distress to them in their classrooms when they feel completely disconnected from the way that their peers think. And just that opportunity to have them connect with one another can change their lives and change their ability to appreciate their learning environment.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm looking forward to the presentation. I mean, I think, I know that many of us who represent organizations recognize that our children need to be around people who are like themselves. Obviously, Voice was talking about how they do that at their camps and extracurricular activities and all those kind of things. And I truly believe supporting kids with neurodiversity, they need to be able to see themselves in among others. But as somebody, as an advocate for kids in learning disabilities, I don't want all of them in learning disabilities classes. I want them to be able to be accommodated and participate without stigma in a regular classroom. For some of them, that is not appropriate, and they need that extra support. And I think what we have to find is the balance of where is that small group of kids that need that extra support versus opening it up for anybody who, who passes the gifted screening. But you're going to do a presentation for us, and I it's not my place here to. I'm just offering my point as a parent. Yes, Colette.
I wonder, for SEAC, within the spirit of, having a voice to advocate for and articulate the needs of all of our learners, I wonder if we want to think about, within the context of a budget where we are 17 million overspent, and hearing the advocacy of the needs of our gifted learners. And when we talk about the needs of one group, it's always versus the needs of another group, because the money isn't limitless, the resources aren't limitless, and just like Alison highlighted, the part of the decision around emphasizing the support of the kids in the primary class was to free up the resources of our psychoeducational staff to support assessments of other learners across the grades. We need to be thinking, if we're going to add here, it's taking away from somewhere else, and where are we taking away from? So I table that because it's not just a question of adding without thinking of the budget. It's adding within the context of a budget where we're overspent, and knowing that where we add, it's also taking away a service, and who do we take it from?
Okay, so we'll all be ready. We're going to have a fulsome discussion next week, next month, and I'm looking forward to hearing everything, Kate. I mean, you're a wonderful advocate, and we need to hear what the concerns are and really grasp them as a group so that we can better support gifted learners as well. Carol.
I have a question. So I guess in preparation for that presentation, but just as part of our learning as SEAC to discuss all of the needs of all students in special education in the board, is there a way that we can have access to some data just around the different identification, how many students have been identified with the various exceptionalities in the various grades and sort of what their placements are? Because it does seem that with giftedness in particular, because that's the one that we're talking about right now, but I'm looking at the chart and seeing that there's quite a few, movements and things that have happened with classes. Is there a regional difference in needs and identifications? Or, sort of what is causing the closure of classes in one area and then not in another? Are we seeing parents paying for that, screening or testing in certain areas and then receiving identifications that is then helping with placements, or what exactly is going on there in terms of numbers? I wonder if that kind of data would help to ground the discussions that sound like they're coming in the next few meetings.
Sorry, can I just jump in, Colette? I think one useful piece of information, which I'm not sure we've seen from this year yet, I don't know if it's out yet, is the as you say, the exceptionalities by the number of students by exceptionality. How many of our students are identified as gifted, how many identified, and then by elementary, and at least to get an idea of the numbers that we're talking about. And also looking at the unidentified element, because that always comes up, which is more than half. And who are those kids? Because that's a concern that our organization here has, is who are those kids? So even if we can have those kind of numbers to have a discussion about, we know what size the problem is, or what size, not the problem, the population is that we're trying to serve. That might be useful if we have it. I know it usually comes out in October.
So certainly we can bring the data that we have, which won't be exactly what you're talking about, but certainly we'll have some of it. Some of it lives within our special education plan. So on page 41, you'll find the number of students by identification. And to the point around the unidentified, because we know that that's been a topic of interest for SEAC. This IEP season, we're in the process of having staff input the diagnoses into the field, which is a new aspect of Aspen. And so once that data has been entered and we've verified the integrity of that data, then we'll be working with research to analyze, break down that data and determine who is there. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, Carol.
Sorry, now I'm thinking ahead to how having the data might be useful to having a productive conversation. I know in the last meeting I had asked this question, and I realize now that I didn't ask for the detail. So we were talking about supporting gifted learners in particular in the classrooms, and I believe I'd asked and was told yes, that teachers in a mainstream class who are going to have students in their class who have received the gifted identification have additional training. So I'm assuming that's the additional qualifications. Maybe some data around how many of the primary level teachers have that and how that's implemented. So I'm assuming, you're talking about 2 students who are in the primary grades who are now in a mainstream class in Milton, I guess it is. So have those teachers already received the advanced qualifications or the additional training, or is that planned? Just that kind of information to support the discussion.
So, and just to clarify, it is the CERT that needs the qualifications to support students with special education needs. And the classroom teacher has received professional development. So yeah, they're two separate aspects.
Okay. Any more questions? Or we're going to move on to item 4.2, which is the association reports. Do any associations have anything they'd like to bring and to advise us of today? Sorry, I can't quite read the name.
Oh, that's me. That's Jennifer Laguerre from Autism Ontario. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And
I just, on behalf of Amanda and myself, thank you so much. We're both very excited about the opportunity to work with the SEAC team. So thank you. And we're looking forward, like I said, to learning and working with and contributing. Autism Ontario did send out just a quick update, and I have shared this information with Marta for the meeting minutes if you would like more information. The first is coming up October 17th from 12 to 1:30, and it is a presentation from Brock University and Western University, a live moderated webinar panel to explore and engage autistic people's experiences with applied behavior analysis. Also, Autism Ontario has 2 sessions coming up. The first is the Journey to Adulthood discussion workshop for parents and caregivers of autistic youth, ages 16 to 20. That will take place on Wednesdays from October 25th until December 6th from 7 till 8:30. Registration will open October 13th at 7 p.m. And again, the website for that registration will be in the meeting minutes. And finally, Autism Ontario also presents Exploring Autism. That will take place October 26th from 12 till 1. And it is a webinar aiming to introduce autism and neurodiversity, features and information on just how autistic people may perceive and interact with their environment. The website to RSVP for that, again, will be in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will take the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Centre for Diverse Learners, who represent neurodiverse youth or children and youth and their parents with learning disabilities, ADHD, level 1 autism, and mental health issues. And so I'm so pleased to have Autism Ontario here to support other neurodiverse individuals through their work. So welcome, and proud to have you and glad to have you as part of the team. In terms of things that are going on with CDL, we have 3 workshops taking place this month, this Wednesday, which is tomorrow, the week after and the week after that, looking at post-secondary pathways for neurodiverse students. So we're looking at, first one is entrance to university, looking at accommodations, processes, how to apply, all those kind of things. Second one will be colleges. And then the third one is the trades. So trying to look at all different options for neurodiverse youth to achieve their career goals. So those are on our website for anybody who's interested in attending. Any other groups? If not, we'll move on to item 4.3, the trustees' report.
So we just have one thing to mention this evening. This year we are going to be, or the board, I should say, not we, is developing the next strategic plan. So the multi-year plan, it's called, in school boards. So the current one, it goes until 2024. And so this year there will be quite a bit of engagement. There will be a call out for community engagement in particular to help develop the direction, the strategic direction of the board as we move into the next 4 years. So there'll be more to come on that, but I just wanted to let everyone know that that's a big task for this coming school year.
Great, thank you. So we're now at item 4.4, the committee reports. I'll go through a list of the standing committees, and if there are any updates from the SEAC representatives. Accessibility and Coordinating Committee, Evelyn.
Not yet. I'm hoping by next month I can share something, as there will be a meeting in between now and then.
Great. Kate Lambacher, you're
yep.
here?
I just received the schedule the Mental Health and Sport Wellbeing Committee. However, I don't have any connection information, so I'm still fishing for that and hope to have it soon.
Okay, and we will make sure you get that. Colette will make sure you get that. We have the Human Rights and Equity Advisory Committee. Kaiser?
Yes, I did receive the dates, so I have those in my calendar, and the next one coming up is October 17th.
Great, thank you. And I don't think Melissa is here, is she, today? No. Okay, so Melissa represents the Indigenous Advisory Council. Okay, thank you for those reports. We look forward to hearing what goes on at those meetings. So we're now at item 5.0, items for the next agenda or the order paper. We know that we will be having a presentation from ABC and looking forward to that. Are there any other items that people would like to see on an agenda? Won't necessarily be next time, but an agenda coming up. Maybe one week when we've got a lower agenda, we'll spend a bit more time again looking at topics that people might want to bring up. But is there anything, Colette, that you think we need to hear about?
So next month we have our deaf and hard of hearing team. Blind and low vision team coming to do a presentation on how we support our students who receive their services. We received a great presentation from the Student Wellbeing Department on the survey that they conducted on their services and impact. And I asked if they would be willing to come to SEAC. So if you're interested, they would be more than happy to come. So perhaps that would be a December. Yeah.
Okay. Sophia.
Perhaps like assistive technology. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if there was one recently, but you're just hearing about what type of assistive technology is out there, things like SIA claims, how training happens for staff. I'm curious about that, if others are.
Sounds great. Was that another hand up? Nope. Okay. Okay, all right, that's given us some ideas, but again, if we get a slotted time in one of our agendas, we can maybe brainstorm some other ideas and things. I'd like to hear a little bit about bullying efforts, particularly as they relate to students in special education, and see if there's any data and what kind of special programming supports are in place for some of our students who may be at high risk of stigmatization and bullying. That being said, we have now completed our agenda. We are at 6.0 adjournment, and it is 8:57, I think. So that being said, we will now adjourn. Thank you very much for your time and look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.